Number 10. Strange lights. Leroy Chow was a commander of the ISS for 6.5 months in 2005, and finally opened up about some strange sights he saw. While installing 2 navigation antennas 230 miles above Earth, traveling at 17,000 miles an hour, something was out of the ordinary. Chow told the Huffington Post, and I quote, "I saw some lights that seemed to be in a line, and it was almost like an upside down check mark, and I saw them fly by and thought it was awfully strange," unquote. However, despite this experience, Chow still remains skeptical that we have been visited by extraterrestrials. He continues, and I quote, "I'm skeptical of claims that we've been visited by aliens from another planet or dimension, but I don't rule it out 100%. I have an open mind, and I do believe there's other life in the universe. If there is life out there that's so much more advanced than we are, and they know either how to travel great distances in short amounts of time, or they're able to come from a parallel universe into ours, why don't they just come out and show themselves?" Unquote. That remains one of the biggest questions in the scientific community, and a lot of us at Most Amazing, we are also very confused. If the likelihood is so high, where the heck is everybody? Number 9. Space Serpent. With the amount of space junk that orbits planet Earth, it's no surprise the first explanation for any UFO is a broken satellite or debris from another rocket launch. When Dr. Story Musgrave saw an 8-foot-long white snake floating in space, his first thought was that it was some kind of broken tubing. According to an interview with Omni Mag, Musgrave said, and I quote, "On 2 flights I've seen and photographed what I call the snake, like a 7-foot eel swimming out there. It may be an uncritical rubber seal from the main engines. In 0G it's totally free to maneuver, and it has its own internal waves like it's swimming. All this debris is white, reflecting sunlight, or you don't see it. Cruising along with you at your velocity, it's still got its own rotation. At 0G, things have an incredible freedom. It's an extraordinary ballet," unquote. But as to what it actually is remains to be confirmed. Yes, it could be the tubing, but who knows. But Musgrave fully believes that there are civilizations much more advanced than us out there, and seeks to make contact with them even while retired. Number 8. Yang Li Wei. Do you have that friend that likes to remind everyone while watching like insert space film here that there's no sound in space, so how can we hear the explosion? Everybody's got that friend. Yeah, well, begrudgingly, they're right. There is no sound in space because it is a vacuum. So when Chinese astronaut Yang Li Wei heard a strange knocking on the shuttle he was in, you can understand why he would be confused. Yang Li Wei was the first man to be sent to space via the Chinese space program, but he's not the only one to have heard the sound. From 2005 to 2008, other Chinese astronauts have also reported hearing similar sounds and have no idea what the specific cause is. Maybe it's something to do with the mechanics of their ship. Who knows? The leading theory is actually to do with the sound as a result of a decreasing air pressure that changes the structure of the spacecraft. So first it was aliens, now it's actual science. Why not both? Number 7. A little space music. The precursor to the Apollo 11 moon landing was of course the Apollo 10, launched in May 1969. It was a test run in which they sent 2 men up to space in a command module and dropped down to 10 miles above the moon. A pretty high stakes mission overshadowed by the success of the 11 landing. But something that stood out was a strange whistling sound, kinda like weird space music, like exactly how you'd imagine it. They heard it over their headphones, and their first impression was that this strange music was sent from ETs trying to phone home, but alas, some hope was shattered. The whistling sound could be explained as interference between VHF radios, so alas, not the explanation we wanted. But hey, imagine hearing that on a test mission. Pretty eerie. Number 6. An unidentified flying UFO. What? It's just a matter of time before actual UFOs break the mold as to what we think they look like. Saucer-like with a bubble on top. Yeah, that stuff is cliche. James McDivitt and Ed White were the first to realize this when they saw one of the strangest things below them. While flying over Hawaii in June 1965, he spotted a strangely shaped ship approaching the Gemini 4. According to James, and I quote, "It had a rather definite form, a cylindrical object that was white and had a long arm stuck out to the side," unquote. So kind of like a flying cigar. When he got back to Earth, he was eager to see what he had shot to get a closer look, but when he got there, he was shown an entirely different section of film. He said it was whited out and that it looked nothing like what he'd seen. There was also a hole poked through the film. Number 4. Space bugs. In previous videos, I think I gushed about the fairy tale romance between astronaut John Glenn and his wife Annie. It's super cute, but I'll leave that for another time. One of the first astronauts, John Glenn, saw something astounding in space while orbiting our planet in 1962. While soaring over Australia, shock almost took him over as he saw something strange fluttering before him. Tiny little lights like tiny fireflies almost danced around the Friendship 7 capsule. When he tapped on the window though, they flew off just like insects would. NASA was at first concerned because they thought that it was a result of the heat shield that the little lights were fragments burning up, but that didn't check out. The next explanation they prepared was that they were actually very tiny ice particles, but up until his death in 2016, Glenn was never really fully sold on the explanation. He always held on to the idea that they were something friendly or curious that visited him. Number 3. A brilliant flash of light. On May 5th, 1981, a Russian astronaut experienced a strange encounter and still can't explain it. He couldn't pass it off as space debris or a satellite because it actually interacted with him. At 6 p.m. that night, as he was flying over South Africa, a strangely shaped ship was flying alongside his ship. It hovered there watching him and then let out a small explosion followed by a second. After the second explosion, another craft appeared suddenly. But even stranger, there was a third flash, after which both crafts disappeared. The astronaut to this day has no explanation for what he saw. He reported that, and I quote, "The object resembled a boom. I saw it become transparent as if it had a body inside. At the other end I saw something that looked like a gas discharge, like a jet object," unquote. The body inside points to something very strange indeed, but just what we will have to wait to find out, because maybe one day whatever it was will come and visit us and have coffee. Number 2. The weather balloon. I wonder if astronauts ever feel like they aren't doing enough, or if they're not living life to the fullest, you know? Like, I mean, it's pretty hard to say you wasted your life on the couch when you've just, gone to space. Donald Slayton grabbed life by the horns and accomplished many incredible feats within his working life. But one discovery continues to stump him to this day, and it happened before he was even in space yet! In 1951, Slayton was testing a P-51 fighter and was flying at 10,000 feet when something caught his eye. It looked like a weather balloon, but at the same time unlike any weather balloon he'd ever seen. It was moving really fast as if it was being accelerated by something. Then, almost as if it saw him coming, the object pulled a quick 45-degree turn and sped away. And last but not least, they're watching us in our number 1 spot. I think the thing that freaks me out about the argument that aliens are already here is that they're just like chilling, watching us, waiting for whatever they're looking for, I guess. What are you waiting for? What are we ready for? I don't know. If you believe the moon landing hoax, then you may find this fact impossible to believe, so it's up to you. According to history, Neil Armstrong was the first man to walk on the moon. Well, the first human man. Human thing, human person, human being. Anyways, NASA lost transmission for apparently 2 minutes, but then a secret message was sent to the space station. Allegedly, Armstrong was heard saying, "These babies were huge, sir, enormous. Oh god, you wouldn't believe it. I'm telling you, there are other spacecrafts out here, lined up on the far side of the crater's edge. They're on the moon, watching us," unquote. Apparently, Armstrong saw lights peeking out of one of the craters. When they asked for more detail, however, the transmission went dead for a full minute. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have life on Mars. This is a legend that's been around for quite some time, especially since the 1970s when the Viking 1 and 2 were launched. This legend basically suggests that there is, or at least was, alien life on Mars, and that NASA knows about it, but they are just keeping the little secret to themselves. Like all space conspiracies, this legend ranges from some pretty out there, but still based in reality ideas, all the way to absolutely absurd tinfoil hat vibes. What I mean is that some believe this is true because they claim to see alien fossils in the photos of the surface of Mars that we have. There are others who think that maybe NASA just isn't searching for signs of alien life at all. And then there are those who think that Mars is actually fully inhabited by like half alien, half human creatures and NASA's just hiding that from us. I'll let you decide on this one. In our number 9 spot today we have X-37B. So I guess this one is more like a NASA mystery rather than an urban legend, but basically they sent a space shuttle up, but no one knows exactly what it's for. Throughout the last few years, an X-37B spacecraft has gone on a number of different missions up into the orbit of Earth, but no one is willing to spill the beans on what these missions are aimed at doing. Of course, like with any legend, the theories are abound. Some people believe the purpose of these missions is to test out new technology. Very reasonable, but there are others out there who think that these missions are meant to destroy different satellites, or that this craft is really some kind of space weapon, but only time will tell if all of the secrets of the craft ever get declassified. In our number 8 spot today we have the live stream. This is an urban legend that stems from an ISS live stream a few years ago. Back in 2016, alien enthusiasts and UFO watchers noticed as they watched a live stream that was being broadcast from the ISS 2 two objects that seemed to be entering Earth's atmosphere. These objects were unidentified and they looked like they were tumbling toward Earth, so many people took this image to be UFOs. To only add more fuel to the fire shortly after these objects could be seen, the live stream was cut off abruptly. NASA swears that this was merely just a coincidence, and while that is possible, not everyone is convinced that's the case. In our number 7 spot today we have changes. Okay, other than those who have been to space, who's to say what experiencing something like that would do to just your entire outlook on life, and especially your mental health. I mean, on one hand it's gotta be one of the most incredible experiences, but on the other side it would be terrifying and probably kind of lonely. Spending weeks and sometimes even months in the vast darkness of space, as amazing as it sounds, it likely isn't for the faint of heart. That is exactly why this NASA legend suggests that many of the astronauts who have been to space have returned with changes in their behavior, and apparently NASA has done everything they can to deny this. It is said that there is a psychologist who has worked with many NASA employees who actually went on to criticize the agency for denying that these behavioral changes existed, and she even suggested that they be looked into and researched more because she believes it goes deeper than any of us may even realize. This would include more in-depth screening both before and after the missions. This legend is likely to have developed in 2007 after former astronaut Lisa Nowak was arrested for harming someone, to which she pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. In our number 6 spot today we have the Mystery House. You may or may not have heard about the Mystery House that was seen on the moon in November of last year. This mysterious object was spotted by the Yutu-2 rover, but at the time this rover was at such a distance it needed time to get there to check it out. Months later, when the rover arrived, it was released that it was in fact just a weird shaped rock, but not everyone is convinced, and legend has it this just may be a cover-up for what this Mystery House really is. Of course, people believe that this mysterious object likely has some sort of alien or extraterrestrial origin, despite what researchers are saying. In our number 5 spot today we have space signals. It is no secret that NASA has been tracking and looking into a ton of mysterious radio signals referred to as fast radio bursts that have been detected in space. Some of these signals we have been able to find the source of, but some have been plaguing the minds of scientists everywhere since they were first discovered. Legend has it, however, that NASA knows exactly where these signals are coming from, and of course it's aliens, but they just don't want to tell us. What do you think? Do you think NASA would keep aliens a secret from us, or is this just some space conspiracy sort of stuff? Let us know down below in the comments. In our number 4 spot today we have black holes. Of course, black holes are one of the most terrifying and mysterious parts of space, and while we know they exist, we really don't know much else about them. Of course, people and researchers will try to get a closer glimpse at them and maybe even try and take matters into their own hands and attempt to recreate the conditions of a black hole right here on Earth. The world's largest particle accelerator, the Large Hadron Collider or LHC, which has been credited with proving the existence of the Higgs boson particle, is part of the source of another space legend, and that has to do with the idea that NASA is creating their own black hole. Some believe this project is intentional, while others just worry about it becoming a reality accidentally. It's true that if this were to happen it would be bad news, but luckily this probably isn't very likely and may not even be possible. In our number 3 spot today we have secrets. Of course, NASA knows a lot more than the average person would when it comes to the likely fate of our planet. I mean, they know a lot more about the planet than the average person, and tell me this, when was the last time you even looked through a telescope? It's just safe to say they are better briefed on all of the cosmic horrors that threaten our planet. We are definitely more well versed with the disasters that we may face here on the planet, but when it comes to threats that sit thousands of light years away, well, we definitely aren't the experts. That is the basis for this theory or legend that should NASA find out that we are facing some sort of humanity-destroying space threat, that they wouldn't even tell us. NASA would likely know about a life-altering asteroid collision long before it happened, but some people think that even if they had the time to warn us, they just wouldn't. And it doesn't even stop at the usual threat like an asteroid. This belief includes things like pieces of space junk, an alien invasion, the sun burning us alive. Really, as wild as you can get, people think NASA would just keep it all a secret. In our number 2 spot today we have preparations. On July 20th, 1969, President Nixon made a call that would rack up some astronomically large long-distance charges when he called the Apollo 11 astronauts who were, at the time, on the moon. He of course wanted to congratulate them on this incredible achievement, but as it turns out, he maybe wasn't all that confident that the mission was going to be successful. His former speechwriter let it slip that there was in fact an emergency broadcast script that had been written should the mission have gone south. The speech was later leaked and it said, quote, "Fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace. These brave men, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin, know that there is no hope for their recovery, but know that there is hope for mankind in their sacrifice." I know everyone's got to have a contingency plan, but if I was one of those astronauts, it would be a little bit chilling to have heard about the words that were prepared in the case that you were just being left out in space forever. In our number 1 spot today we have Stuck. Recently on a Space Legends myth list, we talked about the Fisher space pen, and today we are talking about how it relates to another NASA legend. Basically, Nixon almost did have to use that speech he had prepared, because following the historic moonwalk, Aldrin and Armstrong discovered that a 1-inch engine arm circuit breaker switch had broken off the instrument panel. This was an integral part of getting the engine to ignite so that they would be able to make it back home, so rightfully so, they were pretty terrified. The broken switch was reported to Mission Control, but by the next morning they still didn't have a solution. Aldrin explained that, quote, "After examining it more closely, I thought that if I could find something in the LM to push into the circuit, it might hold. But since it was electrical, I decided not to put my finger in or use anything that had metal on the end." This is where the legend comes in. People claimed that he used one of the Fisher space pens to help him fix this broken switch, but that isn't entirely true. It wasn't a Fisher pen, but he did use one that had a felt tip. Aldrin said, quote, "I had a felt-tipped pen in the shoulder pocket of my suit that might do the job." He went on to explain, quote, "After moving the countdown procedure up by a couple of hours in case it didn't work, I inserted the pen into the small opening where the circuit breaker switch should have been and pushed it in. Sure enough, the circuit breaker held. We were going to get off the moon after all. To this day, I still have the broken circuit breaker switch and the felt-tipped pen I used to ignite our engines." If this didn't work, it is very likely that these astronauts would have been stuck on the moon. This was indeed a very serious problem that could have gone a much different way.
In our number 10 spot we have The Gray Thing. This is a story told by an anonymous online user that claims to be an astronaut who once saw an alien in an underground US base. Take it with a grain of salt, but I wanted to include it because the story was super interesting to read. He claimed to have been traveling through a US base that he didn't want to name as there is only a number of people allowed in and he doesn't want to be tracked. Anyways, at this base he saw a gray person that was quite definitely not from this planet. Also, when out in space he had seen a fleet of aircraft that he knew were UFOs, but he didn't think we had any contact with them yet. It wasn't until that moment that he realized that not only do we have contact with them, the aliens are actually already living among us. Interesting. Well, there are so many quote-unquote whistleblowers that have mentioned gray people, so this story could be true. What do you think? In our number 9 spot we have the flying saucer. Astronaut Deke Slayton revealed in an interview in 1951 that he had seen UFOs. Technically not in space, but obviously the UFO would have come from space, so I wanted to include this one. He said that he was testing a P-51 fighter and flying at about 10,000 feet in Minneapolis when he spotted something strange in the distance. It was gray and kinda looked like a kite, but a kite wouldn't be flying this high, he thought. As he got closer, he saw that it was like a saucer, a disc. He eventually realized that it was starting to move away from him, and then as quick as a blink, it pulled about a 45-degree climbing turn and then accelerated and disappeared. You can see why I wanted to include this one. In our number 8 spot we have UFO in orbit. Astronauts James Lovell and Frank Borman have claimed to have seen a UFO during the second orbit on the Gemini. There have been many skeptics around this claim, and they usually say that it was probably the Titan booster rocket that was at its final stage. However, Lovell has replied to this claim saying that he could also see the booster rocket nearby when he saw the UFO. The exchange initially reported went as follows. Lovell: bogey at 10 o'clock high. NASA employee: this is Houston, say again 7. Lovell: said we have a bogey at 10 o'clock high. NASA employee. Gemini 7, is that the booster or is that an actual sighting? Laval, we have several. Actual sighting. NASA employee. Estimated distance or size? Laval, we also have the booster in sight. Ooh, well, I don't know how the skeptics got around that, but skeptics are pretty committed to believing their own narrative about life in the universe, so oh well, let's let them stay in their boring world. In our number 7 spot, we have enormous babies. There have been many reports from NASA employees of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin seeing aliens when they first arrived on the moon. Even though Buzz and Neil deny it, I'm sure they have been told to deny it, if you know what I mean. A former NASA employee by the name of Otto Binder bypassed NASA's broadcasting and picked up the following being said. NASA, what's there, Apollo 11? Response, these babies are huge, sir. Enormous. Oh my god. You wouldn't believe it. I'm telling you, there are other spacecraft out there, lined up on the far side of the crater edge. They're on the moon watching us. Apparently, off the record, the astronauts have admitted to many scientists that they did indeed see something. Yeah, I believe it. It's silly to think that there is nothing out there. That's just, human ego, I think, to believe that we are the only intelligent life. That mixed with human fear. In our number 6 spot, we have the lights. Of course, I couldn't have a list without the strange space light phenomena on it. An entire crew at the International Space Station in 2005 witnessed a set of strange lights projecting across space. Commander Leroy Chow has commented on this strange sighting and said that the light was in a weird formation as if it were an upside down V shape. The crew and Chow saw this fleet of lights in the shape of an upside down V fly past them. It would be one thing if it were just one person, but an entire crew witnessed this. That's a lot of people that would be lying. So personally, I think that's all the proof we need, folks. There is other intelligent life out there and they may be close by. Perhaps they're already here and running our government. You decide. In our number 5 spot, we have alien interaction. This one needed to be included on the list because it's really just suspicious. Very sus. Apparently, Scott Kelly, a well-known astronaut and most notably known for spending a very, very long time on the International Space Station, the longest an astronaut has ever spent there, actually. But anyways, Scott has been known to make quite a few jokes about the things he's seen out there, and we have to wonder, are they really jokes, or was he told not to speak his truth? He was quoted as once saying that aliens have it easier in space than we do. First off, someone's gotta teach this man what a joke is, cause it's missing a punchline. And second, what does that mean? What makes you say something like that? There must be some weird truth behind it. Anyways, I'm convinced that he's seen aliens. What about you? Let me know in the comment section below. In our number 4 spot, we have a fleet of UFOs. Allegedly, astronaut Gordon Cooper is another one who has reported seeing UFOs in space. If you haven't heard of Gordon Cooper before, then you should know that he flew both the Mercury 9 and the Gemini 5, so he's really had quite a lot of time in outer space. Apparently, he is now coming out and saying that around the time he flew for the Air Force, he saw a fleet of UFOs. Apparently, not more than 10 years later, he came across a similar scene. Allegedly, in 1963, one of them flew towards him, and to back up his statement, he has proof because it was picked up by the radar. Whoa. Also, what would be his reasoning for making this up? To gain fame? Nah. Well, I mean, it's possible, but he would have already gained some clout just by being an astronaut in space, so I feel like that's probably not likely, but anyways, I believe him. He's gone on to say that, quote, I believe that these extraterrestrial vehicles and their crews are visiting this planet and other planets. Most astronauts were reluctant to discuss UFOs. I did have occasion in 1951 to have 2 days of observation of many flights of them, of different sizes, flying in fighter formation generally from east to west over Europe. Fascinating. In our number 3 spot, we have the cylindrical object. Allegedly, in 1991, a cosmonaut by the name of Musa Menarov caught a cylindrical object on film that he believed to be a UFO. The object was shiny, and in the film, it swivels and flies across space. Originally, Musa thought it was something off the ship, but then after further investigation, nothing was missing from the ship. So after further reflection on seeing it and, looking back at the footage, he's convinced it was some kind of UFO spaceship or UFO device. What's with all the UFO objects that are so shiny? Do you think this is a UFO? Or perhaps is it something from another planet? Let us know in the comment section below. Coming up in our number 2 spot, we have the mystery hut. The ending to this made me lol so hard that I had to include it. A mystery hut was discovered by China's astronauts and people operating their U-2 moon rover. This rover was making its way through the northwestern part of the moon when it was discovered. On the camera, a cube-shaped mystery hut was captured. This was only in November of 2021. It created a spectacle. Had moon people finally been discovered? Everyone was asking themselves. By January 2022, the rover was much closer, and what did it find? Oh, just a small piece of space rock on a crater rim. The drama. Ooh, look, a mystery hut. Probably the moon men reside there. 1 month later, alas, it is a rock. Humans are funny. In our number 1 spot, we have UFO footage. Recently in 2020, Russian astronaut, cosmonaut Ivan Wagner made a time-lapse video while orbiting space, and he claimed to have found something. Space guests, he called them. In his video, you see the curved edge of the Earth at night with a green swirl of the aura moving across the surface and several falling stars. It's such a cool video to see. Then, about 9 seconds in, you see a fleet of 5 possible UFOs. He said that because it's in a time-lapse format, you can't measure how long they were there, but in real life, it was for about 50 seconds in real life time. This video is so crazy. Honestly, even if it's not alien fleets, to see such a beautiful sight with the falling stars is just unreal. It must be incredible to be an astronaut.